Hi, fourth graders, it's Mrs. Sites. Today we're going to review one and two step multiplication and division word problems, including interpreting remainders. So, if you remember when we went over this before, if we divide and get a remainder, we have to decide, do I put my quotient that's on top of the house? Do I pick my remainder or do I bump my answer up? So remember, if they ask for leftovers, you're going to pick the remainder. If they ask for how many full or complete sets or boxes, you're going to pick your answer on top of the house, your quotient. But if they say we need to make sure that all the people have a seat or everyone gets a ride on the amusement ride, if they say all or everyone, or even if they don't, but you know everyone should get one, you need to bump up your answer. So let's get started and we'll see. I believe we have one of those types of questions we'll run into. It says Miss Charles opened four packages of crayons, then divided. So we got a clue here. We are going to divide the crayons equally among three students. If there are six crayons in each package, how many crayons did each student get? Well, I see this each next to a number. I know to times. So I know I'm going to times and I'm going to divide. So first, let's go do the timesing because usually you can't divide until you get your total, and that's where we need to multiply. So it says, I'm going to just kind of go over here and put divide by 3 because I know that's my last step. It says she opened four packages of crayons. So I'm just going to draw four packages of crayons. And there were six crayons in each package. So since these are all the same, I know that's 6 times 4, and 6 times 4 is 24. So there were 24 crayons, and she divided them among three students. So I'm going to take my 24 up there, and I'm going to divide 3 into 24. Well, 3 can't go into 2, so I make my line bigger. 3's to 24, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. That's 8. 8 times 3 is 24. So my answer is 8. So I'm looking, I only see this one. It says 8, but let me make sure. Yes, they did 4 times 6, and then they divided it by 3. If you got a little confused and didn't know what you were supposed to multiply, you could at least seen this. I'm going to divide it among three groups. These two were the only ones that said divide it by 3. Well, then you could kind of narrow it down. This says 3 times 6 and this says 4 times 6. Well, if we already used our 3, we can't have another 3. We had a 4 and a 6. So that kind of, sometimes if you're confused, look at your choices. Sometimes they can help you because if you know you're going to divide by 3, you got rid of two choices. And then you know C is wrong because once we divide by 3, the only numbers left are 4 and 6. So when in doubt, if you're kind of confused and you're not sure, because that one was a little bit tricky because the 4 and the 6 weren't right next to each other where they usually are, and it was a little tricky on what we should multiply. Look at your choices. All right, the table below shows the number of items that 6 students placed in a recycling bin. We have sheets of paper, aluminum cans, and plastic bottles. If each student placed an equal number, well, equal number means to divide, in the bin, how many items did each student put in? Well, I know there were 6 students, so I know ultimately I'm going to divide by 6. But what do I need to do with these items first? If they all brought an equal amount, and these are all my items, what should I do with these items first so I can know what goes inside my house for my dividend? If you said add, you were right. We need to get our total. We're missing that because if I had my little strip diagram, I know my parts. I know there's a 42, I know there's a 12, and I know there's a 6, but I don't know my total. So when I don't know my total, I'm either adding or I'm timesing. Well, I know I'm not timesing because these aren't all the same. I mean, I know I'm not timesing because I have different numbers here. It's not like I had 4 boxes and they all had 12s in there. So I know that's not going to be right. So I'm going to add to get my total. So I'm going to add 42, 12, and 6. I have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 4, 5, 6. I have 60. Now be careful, sometimes 60 would be a choice when you do your first step and there's that banana there, but they didn't do it. So I'm going to put 60 inside my house for my dividend and I'm going to divide. 6 can go into 6, 6 one time. 1 times 6 is 6. Subtract, bring down. Can 6 go into 0? No, 6 times 0 is 0. So my answer is 10. Did anybody remember that trick that we learned a while back? That when you're dividing, since 6 went into 6 one time perfectly, if it went in perfectly, you're allowed to just bump up that 0. If you did, good job that you remembered that zeros trick. All right, the next one. 3 boys. Just cross that out and put a 3. 3 boys played a basketball game. Rick scored 18. Chin scored half as many as Rick. Okay, I'm going to stop. They're saying they're not telling me exactly how much he has. They're saying he's half as somebody. And then this Mateo is 3 times as many as Chin. So I know that's a T-chart problem. Because anytime they don't give you the exact numbers and they tell you someone's more or less or half or 3 times more, you know it's a T-chart. So I'm going to go ahead and say Ricky is 18. I'm going to cross that out. Chin is half as many as Ricky. Remember, half means to divide by 2. You may ask yourself, well, why do we divide by 2? Because when you write a half, your denominator is a 2. So that's why we divide by 2. If they would have said Chin had a third as much, you would divide by 3. A fifth as much, you would divide by 5. So a half, since 2 is our denominator, we divide by 2. So we've got to take Ricky, which was 18, and divide by 2. 2 can't go into 1. 2 goes into 18 9 times. 9 times 2 is 18. So Chin is 9. So I'm going to get rid of him. Now Mateo is 3 times as many as Chin. Well, times means multiply. So I'm going to take Chin, which was 9, and do 3 times. 9 times 3 is 27. Now be careful, because remember when they give us these T-chart problems, sometimes they may ask you to add up all the boys or subtract them, or sometimes they may just ask you for a particular boy. But it's always important to use that T-chart because it keeps our numbers straight and with the correct person. Now the question says, how many points did Mateo score? So this time they just wanted one of the boys, 27. But it's always good to use that T-chart just in case they do ask you for a total amount of all the boys. I believe we have one more. Luther will display his entire collection of model cars in acrylic cases. Those are kind of just like clear cases. And like when you have collectibles, you put the cars in a case and no one can touch it. So it just keeps it intact. He had 98 cars and he will display no more than 4 cars in a case. What is the minimum number of cases he needs to display all of his cars? Well, I'm looking around and I don't see really a clue word, but I do remember this. I've taught y'all this before. If the same word is behind both numbers, it means division. Because if they're all cars, it's like they're separating them out. And that's what they're doing. There's 98 cars and they're separating 4 cars in a case, 4 cars in another case, 4 cars in another case. So they're splitting up a similar item. They're all cars. So I know that's division. So I'm going to come divide 98 by 4. I underline my 9. How many 4s go into 9? 4, 8, 12. 12's too much, so 2. 4 times 2 is 8. I subtract, I bring down. Now, how many 4s to 18? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. 20 is too much, so back it up. 4, raise the roof, put the 4 on top. 4 times 4 is 16. Okay, here's what we were talking about earlier. We got 24 remainder 2. 24 is a choice. Now, usually 2 would be a choice. They didn't do it this time. And 25 is a choice. So we have to ask ourselves, if he's putting these cars in these cases and they want to know how many cases so that all the cars get put in a case, if I pick 24, you're going to have 2 cars that don't get to be in a case. So since it said all of them need to be put up, we are going to bump up our 24, and we just bump it up one time. We bump it up to a 25 so that those 2 cars can be put up. And you may be asking yourself, why do we just bump it up once since there's 2 cars? Well, because they said a case can hold 4 cars. Well, we have just 2 cars left over, so we don't need 2 cases because a case can hold 4 and we just have 2 leftovers. So we just need to bump it up one time to a 25 so we can get an extra case so those 2 cars can be put up. So this is one. Remember, if it says all or everyone needs to be put up or go on the ride or go on the trip or get a ticket, make sure you bump it up. Now, if they would have just said how many complete cases, then we would have picked 24. So when you're working today, just make sure that you remember that when you're dividing and if you get a remainder, if it says how many are left over, you pick your remainder. If it says how many complete cases or full cases, you pick the answer on top of your house, your quotient. But if they ask how many so that all or everyone gets to participate or go or get used, then you need to bump up your answer by 1. See you tomorrow.